Welcome to the Mystical Mermaid Lounge podcast, a space where all spiritual seekers are honored and celebrated. This podcast was born from the journeys of your hosts, who have each faced her own dark night of the soul, but they've emerged with an unshakable belief in divine connection, cosmic inspiration, and her true life's calling. Join us on a journey of personal growth, transformation, and magical self-discovery. Your first co-host is Chloe Brown, a gifted intuitive empath and shadow work life coach. Your second co-host is Chioni Starr, an intuitive energy worker and acclaimed past life regressionist. The Mystical Mermaid Lounge podcast starts now.
I am Chloe, and I wanted to introduce to you Chioni.
Hello.
And today we've just wanted to check in with everybody. We've personally, each of us have had the beautiful opportunity to do some traveling. And although mine was short and sweet, it was very powerful and incredibly impactful. I am sure that Chioni's story is going to be just as much, if not more so. And I wanted to share it with everybody, and so did she. So before we get too deep into it, I felt called to pull a tarot card for this episode. And I kind of decided to blast it onto Chioni without telling her about it. And funny enough, she had also done something similar on her own side. And so we thought we would share that today. Do you want to start with yours first, hon?
Yeah, sure. I was, unbeknownst to Chloe, pulling my own tarot card. I often do that in the mornings and I share what exactly I've pulled with a good friend of mine. And we typically have a little conversation, short and sweet, about what we think that card means to us and what that may bode for the day. And so, in keeping with that tradition, I did the same today, and I was fortunate enough to pull the Four of Wands. And I say fortunate because my card pulling history for the past month has not necessarily been extremely positive. But as we tell our good friend Bex, it's not that the card is indicative of what's going to happen to us. It speaks often to the energy of the moments that we find ourselves in. So I try to tell myself that and live the talk that I had shared with our friend Bex. And so today, though, I got to lay that down and truly see a wonders card, which is the Four of Wands, as mentioned. In a nutshell, means that all of the hard work that we've been putting forth, whether it's in this podcast or in my family life and any other projects I have going on, is finally coming to fruition. And so that positive card totally amped me for the day. And we had a wonderful podcast interview with another great friend, Jordan Hustis, and that went swimmingly. And I know that this discussion, I should say, between Chloe and me is also going to go swimmingly because I'm making that card come true. How about you, Chloe?
Yes. I love that. Yes. And coincidentally, even though we both know I don't believe in coincidences, so I chose that word very intentionally, I pulled the Nine of Pentacles for us today.
Hurrah! You and I are both on the same path, albeit different suits.
Yes. I couldn't believe it when I heard your card because perhaps it's my lack of education, but essentially I felt like this card meant the same thing to me. Intuitionally, that's exactly what I took away from it. But it wasn't just for me, it was very much us. We as a team, as a partnership, as our friendship, as you've become essentially family to me. As I joke around, I've absorbed you into my family.
Like a tumor,
Oh, and we love it.
a benign tumor we choose to live with in our lives.
Exactly. Love it. And on my deck, I today I'm using the Light Seers Tarot, which is my go-to by Chris, and the artwork just truly speaks to me. And on the Nine of Pentacles card, it is just stunning. It's absolutely stunning. If you have a moment, please to look that up. And she's reaching to that super pretty owl, which it just spoke to me. Just spoke to me. I love it. Which brought me back to what we were going to talk about today. So that was travel that we were lucky enough to have experienced in the last couple of weeks between the two of us. Mine was inspired for a birthday trip. Mine's much shorter, so we'll start with that one. I chose the only other girlfriend I have in my life that I have been absorbed by, I should say. She has truly just become my sister, and we decided for my 41st birthday, we were going to go take a trip to a couple states away and visit some ancestral location for me where it turns out my grandmother was buried, and I just wanted to go pay some respects.
How long was that drive for you?
Oh, I think it took us, I think about 7 to 8 hour drive each way.
So that's a lot of time to be with your other sister from another mister. How was it?
It was so glorious, all the way down to the smallest of details. She's not mystical as I am outwardly, but when I say I've never met a pure yellow and white aura in my whole life, that would definitely be describing her. She is just this big, warm, embracing hug of a presence. She's just stunning outside and inside. And her family is absolutely the extension of my family and truly give me purpose. So I felt like there was a lot of pressure on that trip because we're in the car for a long time and we listen to different kinds of music and we're driving my vehicle and it's smaller, not so comfortable, but it got amazing gas mileage. And, usually she's the mom who drives everyone around and she takes care of everybody. But I really wanted to kind of give her a break. And we didn't plan anything. We only planned one hotel night stay. And originally we were going to stay for a couple more nights than we had in the end. So it was interesting. The way down there, she could feel my anxiety and the pressure I was putting on myself because it suddenly turned into, for me, the previous week or two before leaving, it turned into almost like an ancestral voyage versus, oh my gosh, just let me get out of town. I need a time off of work, which is originally what it was going to be like the girls' getaway. And it quickly morphed into that ancestral travel and deep diving. So it was heavy and she could feel that. And so, in her most beautiful way, she tried to lighten it and torture me with awful music, in my opinion, but she loved it. So that's what mattered.
You know, an ancestral journey means a lot of things to a lot of different cultures. So the fact that you use that terminology isn't lost on me. My mom is Chickasaw, and she's very quick to point out that is one of the civilized tribes and the point of pride. And I was listening to some historical information today about on a book about the Chickasaw tribe, and they speak to ancestral journeys as part of one of the indigenous celebrations and rituals that they have. And so the fact that you're bringing up your ancestral journey, your perspective of this trip is kind of mind blowing right now. So tell me what
Wow.
that felt like and why were you anxious?
Wow, that's so powerful and so divinely timed, I feel like, that you were listening to that because it was very much a celebration for me. It was honoring that for which I recognized at such a young age I was here to help change my family lineage in some capacity. And I knew that. And I thought, because everybody told me since I had these wide bearing hips, that that meant I was going to bring lots of kids into the world and I would change it by being an attentive and loving parent and all of the things that every child wants their parents to be. And then as you grow up, you recognize they're humans the same way that we are, trying to learn and adapt and deal with the cards that they're dealt while showing all of these hopeful traits and characteristics, hopefully. So I did. I really wanted to change all of that, and I knew that it was inside me. And so it all came into fruition, you know. Actually, I never did submit my DNA. It turned out after doing enough research with Ancestry.com on the paid subscription, I was able to find enough information, which led me to another source, which led me to another source. And I just kept finding the violence, the addiction, the abuse, and the death certificates of many of the children and all of the women in my lineage, whether it was on my mother's side or my father's side. And it just kept breaking my heart over and over and over again. And this divine connection I've always had with my grandmother, who passed way too young, has really allowed me to make light of the opportunities in life that I've had to go right or go left and to choose what's better for me or the easier way. And at those moments, I've always felt like she's been there to help guide me. So I felt called to honor her on my 41st birthday when I know she passed away right after her 41st birthday of leukemia. So that's exactly what it was. It was a celebration, and the stress and anxiety came from the pressure, the why me? What have I done? Have I done enough? I've, in many ways, recreated that cycle. How could I be the one to break that? And all of those came together, which we talk about in another episode, now. But that was a lot of pressure to put on somebody for what was supposed to be a birthday celebration getaway from work, is how it all originally started.
That is a lot of pressure. And kudos to your friend for being able to pick up on the intensity and purpose behind your anxiety and to walk with you, or in this case, drive with you to the place that you needed to be spiritually and to address those lineage issues that you were looking to heal going forward.
Thank you. I truly believe this is the first time that I've embraced all of the things my teachers and mentors have taught me directly or indirectly when it comes to my spirituality and my belief system. And that was to surrender, to allow the travel to sacred place, which to me, that's exactly what it was, to just happen and the rest will form. And if you allow yourself to enjoy the roller coaster, it'll be potentially life changing in the most beautiful of ways. And that's exactly what happened. I mean, as soon as we got there, I was so excited that I stopped at a million different places along the way just to distract us from how anxiety felt ridden I was. So by the time we finally got there, I hadn't known it yet, but the cemetery gates were already closed for the night. And so we spent a good long time trying to get into there to come up with a game plan. And the roads were all blocked. And we kept following all these detour signs and we kept ending up on the other side of this little city. And in my heart, I just felt that's it. This is the end of it. And it's hard to not cry, actually. It brings back so much emotion in that moment. I thought, once again, I failed. I did it again. And I dealt with all of that. We found somewhere to stay for the night, which wasn't planned, which was a great distraction. And we get in there and we're both so tired that we end up going to sleep pretty quickly. And we both get up super early in the morning. Suddenly, I knew all that grief and anxiety was so egoic driven, and that I need to stop being so critical of myself, give myself grace, and recognize, why are you giving up so early? So we jammed out real early. She was so amazing. We ended up going and stopping somewhere to pick up all of the things to beautify her location.
Your grandmother's location where she was resting.
Yeah, yeah. And I had done what I thought was some pretty extensive research. I contacted the cemetery staff and they drew me this beautiful map, and she wrote this beautiful longhand written note, and they cleaned it all up for me as far as, hedging and yard maintenance. Um, so I just thought, oh, this is going to be so easy. And I get there and I'm like, oh, this place is acreage. I'm never going to find it. And sure enough, wouldn't you know, exactly where I parked was her row. Mm-hmm.
No coincidences, right?
Mm-hmm. But of course, in true Chloe fashion, I had to go with my egoic thoughts first. And for me, that's scientific methodology, which to me was my research, which led me back to beautiful map and all these calculations and this many steps and this many, and I spun on that for the longest of time, which by the way was way far away from where I was parked. And eventually I thought, this is the moment you give up again. And I thought, no, just go back to the car. It's right there. So I'm going back to the car and I have all these tears in my eyes. And my sister says, oh my gosh, it's right here, right where you part. And her jaw's on the floor. She's never speechless. She self-admittingly is not spiritual or woo-woo in any capacity. And she goes, how did you know exactly where she was? Were you pulling my leg? Did you walk around this whole place just to see if I would say anything? And you know me, I just started laughing. We had a good old time with it, and it was a very emotional. I had brought in some seeds and some dirt from my home, and I asked permission from the dirt before I took it if I could share it with my grandmother and save that space for us. And it was very, looking back on it, I could say it was very ceremonial, but in the moment, it didn't feel like it. It was all intuition based. I didn't care who was around and who could see. And as soon as we leave, you'll never believe the conversation that her and I started to have.
Tell us.
Well, I've really grappled with where I fit in this world of labels when it comes to spirituality. And identifying myself as a witch is something that, even just saying it to you here on this episode, I get really anxious and scared. But in my head, that is what I identify myself as. So as we're getting ready to go figure something else out to do for the day, we decided to go to an automobile museum. And on that way, she says to me that her and her husband have come to terms internally with the term witch and what they thought that looked like versus what that looks like to them now. And that she felt that that was important to share with me because she felt as though I was a witch. And she wanted me to know that she loves me unconditionally. And she now knows from her research and being so close to me that witchcraft is truly about unconditional love and supporting yourself first and foremost, the animals and every element around us, and that we're all one and the same. And so, between the visit of the cemetery grave and that social freedom she provided to me, it felt like I lost 100 pounds. I don't know how else to say it. It was like, wow, that was the fear that was holding me back is would my family would love and accept me. And so it gave me this new sense of freedom that ironically enough tied right back into the ancestral travel for me, because that's part of what each and every one of the women in my family on every level have done is hide and disguise who they are to try to fit in so that they wouldn't experience violence, even to their closest, most loved ones. They truly could never be who they were. And even on that level, I was finally breaking the cycle.
So her connotation of your being a witch was based on the negative perspective that many of us have because of the media, because of knowing people who have been in witchcraft and have not used it as a tool to appreciate each other and the elements. They've used it as a way to bend another's will,
Mhm.
which is never a good idea, regardless of which practice you're a patron of. And so she and her husband began to see that that wasn't who you were and never going to be, and therefore came to accept your version of witchcraft or your version of being a witch, which then changed her labeling.
Yeah. Yeah. And, the fears and all of the things that we self-impose upon ourselves, the shame and the fear tactics that we play in our head of, well, will I lose my nieces and nephews? Would I still be able to watch them grow up? Will I still be able to go to their football games or cheerleading camps or whatever they're participating in? And to hear her outwardly come out with such a strong conversation topic that I probably was not strong enough to bring up to her ever. Hopefully I would, but I don't know. And for her to then follow it with, my husband and I both agree that we would never, ever change how involved you are with our family. To us, you are their emergency contact at the school, on the cards. You are their family, and we don't care what you do or don't call yourself. What you emulate is what I want my children to be around. And that was a level of self-acceptance I don't know that I've truly even given myself.
Yeah, it's interesting because, and we had just had this conversation with our friend Jordan about the term witch versus witchy, and one being more, mm,
Soft.
yeah, yeah, is soft and kind of indicative of a magical nature as opposed to being someone who stands as part of their identity in that label of witch. And I completely understand the anxiety that you would have. I'm sure you had to overcome that anxiety yourself in even thinking of yourself in that way because of the negative connotations associated with that term.
Absolutely. And I loved that it has come up in a couple of our podcasts, interviews. And I think, not to dote all over Jordan, which we always do in our personal lives as well, is that she hit the nail on the head, at least in my opinion. The witchy for me is such a softer landing than witch. Yeah, it's just so historically driven that we can really work together as a collective to really reframe and re-embrace that particular word. And then, ironically enough, it just got better from there.
Please tell us, how could it get any better than that? You've already listened to crappy music. You have been in an uncomfortable car, gotten lost and detoured from a cemetery, and then searched for hours for a grave that you parked beside. Did I nail that?
Oh, you really are listening. You're great.
But it
Our poor
just keeps
listeners.
getting better.
Oh,
Please go
love it.
ahead, Chloe.
Yes, you're not wrong though. So then we decide, after all that emotion, naturally I wanted a drink. We look at the clock and it's, yeah, maybe 10:30. So we decide it might be a little too early for that.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
Which she definitely said, actually. So we decided we were going to go to one of the automobile museums because that's kind of our thing every time we travel. It seems like there's a lot of them in lots of cities. So that was a beautiful last minute schedule.
Some people call that the used car lot. I'm just saying. But I'm glad you guys find the museums.
So yeah, we get there and wouldn't you know it, we have all these detour signs again. And I'm like, oh no. Oh no, I cannot. Immediately, intuitionally, I knew I was there for a reason. And so, in true Chloe fashion, I'm trying to find all these reasons to backpedal and just get the heck out of here. But at this point, we're committed to this detour with all of our non-closest friends in this traffic line. It says, Happy International Women's Day celebration event, park on the main street. And I'm like, dang, they knew it was my birthday. Hey.
Not
Finally find this.
everybody gets an international day named after them.
I wish I lived in a country that celebrated and honored it. So to me, that was actually the closest thing to that wish. It's so selfish. Anyway, so we finally find this parking spot and we notice it's next to the river. And she's like, oh my gosh, this is glorious. Can we stop and like eat some breakfast? So we muddle up some breakfast that we had stockpiled food for snacks for our road trip in the car. So we're eating, I'm eating a double chocolate muffin because that's just who I am. And she's eating something healthy. And we throw away our trash and we worry about all of the things going on in the parking area. And I turn around and I all of a sudden notice car after car after car after car. And it says female veteran on all of these license plate. I don't live in a state that has female veterans plates. Not even close. I've never even seen or heard of something like that. Pardon me, it could have said woman veterans, actually. Pretty sure it was woman's veterans plates parked all the way up and down the street. And I had never seen anything like that. So I'm in tears, taking pictures, sending it to my VA women's group, girls that I meet with weekly for support. I am so excited. And again, immediately I just knew, holy moly, this is where I'm supposed to be. So I walk in and I'm trying to play it low key. And my sister's like, well, we have a veteran right here. Does she get a discount to get into the museum? And I'm like, wow, under the bus, I just went. Like, I don't advertise that I'm a veteran normally speaking in my life. So to ask for a veteran's discount. So there she was blasting me out, which she said so pridefully. I love it and respect it. It's just, I'm not necessarily there all the time with her on that. So then the gentleman proceeds to tell us that they're holding a TED Talk in the building on women's empowerment and that the tickets are sold out, that unfortunately I can't participate or watch. But since I am a veteran, assuming I identify as a woman, perhaps I'd be welcomed into the Women's Veterans Conference that's normally held in a different part of the state. But ironically, it's going today, right now, if you want to come in. So we get escorted back to the Women's Veterans Conference Center. And these women were phenomenal. These individuals, every one of them, were just beautiful people. The mountains that they're climbing and pushing, the movement of this state's women's veterans program is inspiring and so honoring that we even be a part of it. But then the director took us around and swagged us out and just really honored us. And my sister's not even a veteran, and she was very honest and vocal about it, and they kept giving her swag and telling her to tell her husband thank you for his service because he is a veteran as well. And both of us were just so full of tears of joy, and it was just, I don't feel like I've ever been so recognized and so seen and so loved, not only in one moment, but it just kept happening. And I could feel my grandma's spirit with us through all of that. And I could hear her kind of nudging me on the arm, like, see, I told you you're amazing. And I could feel it all. And that was a lot for me, especially trying to mask it and still try to put on this front of we're here to party kind of just let's get away kind of concept, which is so funny because I didn't have to mask or hide any of that to my own family, right? She knew better. So then we got to tour that beautiful museum, and then we went to it's a beautiful resort, and I ended up winning about $250 that I was never expecting. So I would gratefully say at the end of the day, Grandma took us out to dinner, a high-end dinner, and bought me cocktails for the weekend. And, the next morning, both her and I woke up and I looked at her with tears in my eyes and I said, I love you so much, but there's nothing this trip can do beyond what it has already done. This has been life-changing for me. I just want to go home and spend the rest of my vacation days with my kitty and my husband. So that was life changing in so many ways. But I'm so grateful to have so many of these opportunities just by following my intuition and not even recognizing it in the moment. It's only in hindsight that I can say, oh, I really was following my intuition that whole time.
I love that your friend, who you're calling your sister, that she brought up that topic of your being a witch that had bothered you and given you such reticence to bring up and had kind of held you back from continuing to have such a beautiful relationship with her and her husband and the kiddos. I love that she brought that up and kind of busted that wall down for you. And it's interesting on two levels. One is that she was intuitive enough to know that it bothered you and that it needed to be said. And secondarily, that she knew that you were. How in the world she came up with those conclusions and knew just the right time to say it, in my opinion, is divine. It's spirit guide led, right? Whether she believes in that terminology or angels or the Holy Spirit, whatever, that's in keeping with her belief system. And so I love that it gave you the freedom that you needed to have externally, and that seeing your grandmother's grave gave you the freedom and the connection that you needed internally. I agree
Absolutely.
with you. I mean, the only other thing that could have topped off that trip was maybe a couple more Bloody Marys, maybe. But I feel that. Go home. You're already halfway there by what
Yeah.
you experienced. How wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm very happy and love that that happened for you and for your sister friend.
Thank you. I love that you said that too, because I kept thinking that I'm like, okay, in my mind, in my reality, with my belief system, I would call that psychic AF, if I'm going to be honest. But, I love that she doesn't subscribe to the same thing. It is a good calibration and a good balance. And I don't believe that she doesn't necessarily subscribe to the same thing. It's the same labels, I think is more what I mean here. We're both talking about the same things. It's just she doesn't use the same label.
Right. And she didn't allow a label to move her opinion of you.
Hmm.
That is a good friend.
Yeah, we need more people like her in the world. I absolutely agree. I aspire to be like her in so many ways.
Beautiful story. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you for letting me. Now, I want to hear all about your trip.
I don't know if my trip can top the immense connections that you experienced, but I think I can convey a connection that surprised me
Hmm.
in some ways, and that also didn't surprise me in another way, but was so much more intense than I could have ever imagined. And I just want to, before I go into this story, which I promise this was over a week long, so I will definitely keep this to Cliff's Notes. But I just want everyone who may not know me to know that I am not an incredibly serious natured person. I used to get in trouble in school beginning in the second grade for laughing too much and for talking too much. And it has followed me since Mrs. Greenhold's class. And every year, my mom would see this comment written on my report card, and she would say, I see you're still doing you. So, I mean, that's just who I am. But
That is family support right there.
right. What my one teacher did tell my mother when I was a child was it's not that we mind the laughing, the giggling, the talking. It's just that it tends to be distracting to others who can't necessarily focus. And my comment as the 2-year-old was, and that's my problem, how? But regardless, I don't approach everything with an incredibly serious nature, but I am extremely deeply rooted in spirituality, and I look for those commonalities at all times. So I just want to say that because it was not a morose walk, the death march to Bataan as I was getting on the plane heading out to Montana, right? My husband and I had been planning for about a year to go to Yellowstone. We give to a wolf conservancy in New York. He loves wolves. He and I had gotten an invitation through the Wolf Reserve to take advantage of a trip to Yellowstone to see wolves during one of their migratory treks from the upper hills down to the lower lands as they follow the bison and other ungulates throughout Yellowstone. And so we saw this invitation because we were donors and we thought, my goodness, that sounds like a great idea. Until we found out that there would be 6 of us on a van for 5 days. That means 6 people, other than my husband and I, who do not know each other. And to me, that sounds like a great idea. To my husband, who is an introvert, that sounded like torture, but he's all about the wolves, right? And so while he is not a praying sort, we'll say in his way, he was praying that these people were friendly enough and okay enough to share space with, right? For that period of time, because that is a long time.
Yeah, that's a lot of time with strangers. That's a lot of room for fear, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. Especially being an introvert. So that takes a certain level of energy to sustain. And the plan was we would be in Yellowstone early, so about 6:30 in the morning until about 3 o'clock in the afternoon with these folks, and we'd be spotting and tracking different wildlife, hopefully the wolves along the way. And then after coming back, we would then meet again for an evening session with a wildlife professional biologist, somebody from the Park Service, what have you. So that's a lot of time to spend together. And for any of you that have been in Yellowstone and Gardner, which was the small town that borders the northwestern entrance that we had entered through, that town is very small, so not a lot of places are open. So you're essentially having dinner with the same folks that you had breakfast with, had lunch with, and shared a close van ride with. When I tell you the universe handpicked the most amazing people to be in this van with us, my husband and I notwithstanding, and to share this amazing trip, I can't even say it enough. We had people with just as much intelligence as they had heart, as they had emotional intelligence, as they had social grace, as they had humor. I couldn't have asked for better strangers to spend an entire week with. We, after a period of time, became somewhat intimate in some of the conversations that we had about what touched us through work. One of the individuals was a clinical psychologist for people with developmental and intellectual challenges and delays. Another person was a criminal attorney, hated what the people he represented did, but felt strongly in the constitutional and civil justice that had to be provided to
Wow.
even the offender. There was another person who worked with elderly people and did art therapy.
I love that.
Another person who is a spiritual ecologist and shaman. And of course, the guide who is a biologist and has worked in wildlife parks, reserves, and service all of her life. And she was so instrumental in her education of not just what we were seeing and the animals' breeding behaviors, social behaviors, nutritional needs. It was beyond that. She helped us become better stewards of the earth and better caretakers of the flora and fauna that we are lucky enough to be in the presence of. And so during a period of transit where we're looking for some specific wildlife to observe and discuss, the conversation got a little personal and people were sharing some things. And I shared about some personal things that had happened in my life specific to my son's addiction and mental health challenges. And while it was painful and completely out of nature for me to even divulge that to a group of people after only 4 days, 5 days, the way everyone rallied around each other as we were sharing our specific stories really brought my ideal of humanity to the forefront. And I thought if there was a way we could take that level of acceptance and compassion and empathy from the criminal attorney to the ecological spiritist, if we could take that from each and every one of us, from our different walks of life, some of us with children, some of us never having been married, some of us world travelers, some of us not. If we could take that group of people as a random sample and say they could do it, so can we. Then I would package that feeling up and sell it if I could. And in addition to divulging some painful things that we had all experienced, not the same thing, but pain is part of life, right? And we grow and we learn through that. I think it was Elise that said once you stop having challenges, you're just a light being on the other side, right? So part of the shtick is we have to carry these challenges with us and face them, hopefully with grace. And the most important thing, I think, is to learn through the humanity that we provide and that others provide us. And to be open to that, because I haven't always been open to that. I would never share anything personal, especially painful, about myself. We often talk about a sense of safety and security. So there's a certain wall that comes, and I am a Cancer. So I can be a little crabby when it comes to that. I will joke and laugh with you all day long, but when it comes to divulging, the soft underbelly, the fact that I felt so moved to do that and was accepted taught me something about the strength it takes, way more strength, I think, it takes to share a vulnerable moment than it takes to stand strong against it.
Absolutely.
And I was surprised by that. Logically, it makes sense, right? But to put myself out there and to have these most amazing people hold me in their space. And a couple of people were crying by the end of the trip, not because of just my story. We talked about the feelings of this land. It was beautiful and majestic and sorrowful and mournful. There were tribes, indigenous people that had been forcibly moved off of their own lands. There were bison in the park, at 5,000 individual bison that did not exist 50 years ago because they had been wiped out across the continent for human cruelty and for greed. And so the culmination of the feelings that bubbled up from the discussion of the indigenous people, the respecting of different cultures, the understanding of why appropriation can feel so disrespectful, and how to hold space for people so that they can reframe and move forward, I think was life-changing. And so that, in a nutshell, was what happened to me while viewing the most beautiful wildlife I have ever seen, and while sharing space with other people who I now would consider to be more than just acquaintances going forward.
Absolutely. I am very excited to potentially be able to share at least one of those individuals with our listeners. I think some profound information and life experiences was shared that I think with you that I think would be wonderful to share with our listeners and myself. I'm very excited for that.
I agree. And I would say for anyone who is interested in wildlife protection, that going to the Yellowstone summit looking on that website and listening to people from all affiliations and associations with Yellowstone and the various wildlife and flora. Deforestation is a big topic, obviously. But getting familiar with something that you may not know a lot about or may not be super familiar with the area will be a true eye opener. So we'll make sure that information is in the show notes. In addition, Kara from In Our Nature Guiding Services is also available on Facebook to look up her information. And she also has her own website. And I would say that for anyone that is going to Yellowstone and interested in getting a true humanity perspective on not just the wildlife, but the history and ecological environment of Yellowstone, she would be an absolutely perfect person to lead and guide you. And we'll also include some other information on where you may want to send donations for wolves, for the bobcat, the cougars, and any of the other wildlife that also needs our support.
I love that. And speaking of that, actually, it raises a question I had about your trip, if you don't mind. Do you feel like the sacred land that you experienced and or the sacred animals and flora, fauna, all of it, do you believe that that helped play a role in what I would call your full circle of love moment that you ended up taking away from Yosemite?
I believe so. I think as soon as you enter that area, there's an overwhelming sense, whether you're empathic, whether you're intuitive or not, there's an overwhelming sense of importance that just comes with being there. You know that land and who it sustains is important, and that it's important not only to our lives and the environment and the ecological system, but also to our history. I think that national history that exists, not just in Yellowstone, but in all the places across our country, needs to have our concerted attention more than just a place to go say, I'm checking this off a list.
Yes.
And I'm not saying I wasn't considering Yellowstone a check off my list because I love wildlife. I love to feel connected to the land, to the elements. But there was a bit of a checkbox there for me too. I don't think I'll ever look at another trip or even my own backyard where I'm experiencing the elements in the same blasé way ever again.
Oh, I
So
love
I
that.
agree with your question 100%.
That's so sweet. And I think I can only speak for myself, of course, but to go back to something you mentioned with the check boxes, I think in hindsight, for me, that is how I listen to my intuition. I'm like, all right, well, I'm just going to check it off. And in my head, that's how I kind of justify those things. But once I get there, wherever it could be, whether it's literally my own backyard or the park up the road or, wherever it is, it could be a city, it could be the forest, it could be a lake. I love the water. It could be anything, the beach. Once I approach it, its physical space, I can feel it naturally embracing me most of the time, depending on the energy of the land. And immediately it transitions from a check off the list to this is the experience that I live for. Like these, I spend my money on experiences. My moments that I catalog in my mental happy moments are often experiences, not items. So although it starts off as an item on my list, it will turn into a beautiful experience. So don't be so hard on yourself.
I think that's a good point because we're never somewhere we're not supposed to be for whatever reason, right? So there was a reason it was on my list.
Yes.
I'm just saying that it wouldn't hurt for us, if anyone wants to adopt this mindset, to be a little bit more present and conscious about our placement in the world. It's not here for our pleasure, it's here for us to share.
And experience, I agree. I love that actually, because I think even to the most idolized person that I could think of in my mind, they still too would probably say, I could definitely take back a little bit more egoic, like checklist type thoughts and be more present in the moment in everything I do. Maybe it's in my shower, visualizing and putting more intention in flushing away all of that does not serve me and bringing to me all of that does serve me and moving forward. So that's a beautiful reminder. What a great takeaway. I love that. Chioni, that was good.
Yeah. When I get serious for a minute, serious
I
things happen.
It's so funny because I'm so similar. Like everybody in my day-to-day life, I'm always the jokester, I'm the trickster, I'm the one who pushes people to the brink of, I know you said you would, but are you still gonna? And I'll just keep pushing. And that's often how it leads me into my trouble is I'm calling someone else's bluff. So I love that we can be serious, but also mix it with humor and know that my truth doesn't have to be your truth or anybody else's, but giving the space for anybody to think about what is their truth and giving them that permission is so amazing.
Agreed. And I will give a plug here to Megan Plummer. She has been a mentor of mine on my spiritual journey. And she always tells me that I need to include the humor that I so much enjoy. So I don't know whether to give her props or not that she actually thinks I'm funny. So there, that part right there is a little questionable. But she does say the fact that I do come at my spiritual journey with a sense of humor, not necessarily a good sense, but a sense that that's not exactly a bad thing, and that we have so many challenging, depressing, oppressing situations that we all either face in our personal lives or in our social circles, how you may feel politically or religiously or what have you, whatever might be pushing your buttons, that sometimes you need a little humor even during the serious times. Not is it a comedic relief at times, but it is a way for us all to connect. It releases that tension, right? And allows us all to connect through a neutral space. And
Hmm.
so I've started to look at my wisecracking ways in a little bit different light. Just a little. It's a little dim right now, but I am getting there.
It's a dimmable switch. Yes. I think she's so right, though. I mean, it really, to me, and I feel like she has expressed this so eloquently, which our listeners will hear when her episode comes out, is it boils back down to energy, right? And the flow of such. So if we need that, if we can feel the stiffness and the staleness or the depth of the emotions in the moment, in that energetic space that you're at, sometimes that joke or that breath of fresh air will recalibrate the whole room and kind of bring everybody back together again and be like, okay. And subconsciously for me, it tells me I'm going to get through this. It's okay. It's just life. And I say that so silly, but it is life. And no matter how amazing your life is, and no matter how awful it's going to be, guess what? It's going to change. And knowing that, I think for me is liberating. It doesn't mean hey, Chloe, you did something bad, therefore you're going to always have bad experiences. Or, just because you did one good thing doesn't mean you're always going to have good experiences. It's about that polarity and finding that balance. Same with humor.
Do you have an invocation?
Oh, I didn't think of this in advance, so this is right off the cuff, but I think sometimes following what feels right, although you may not have any quote unquote validating reasons, sometimes it really is right. Just follow it. The reasons will come into play later.
I agree. Thank you.
Thank you for joining the Mystical Mermaid Lounge podcast. Constructive and positive feedback are always welcome. Drop us some fan mail at mysticalmermaidlounge@buzzsprout.com or email us directly at mysticalmermaidlounge@yahoo.com. Finally, we do not accept sponsorships or ads so that we may bring a less distracting message to our listeners. So, if you are just as passionate as we are about educating and supporting spiritual seekers, then please brew some tea or Joe and pour us a cup at buymeacoffee.com/mystical mermaid lounge. Thanks again and catch us at the next high tide. Bye-bye.